All right, I see a couple more people trickling in, but we'll start at 1:31. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on productivity tools for Civil 3D CAD managers. My name is Colin Gaudette. I am one of the civil technical consultants with SolidCAD, and I'm joined here today with Brian Lewandowski, the civil product manager for CTC Software. So before we dive into things, I kind of wanted to address the title of this webinar. It's not just for CAD managers, obviously. This is for anyone who's had trouble with styles, templates, or overall CAD standards within Civil 3D. They've found it a little bit cumbersome to deal with, maybe. These tools really curb those issues and really speed things up for you. So as we move forward here, we're going to talk a little bit about who SolidCAD is, for those of you who don't know who CTC Software is, and then I'll pass it over to Brian and we'll get right into the demo. So SolidCAD is probably best known as your software reseller. So we supply you guys with your Autodesk and CTC Software subscriptions. We do a ton of other stuff, like events, kind of like this webinar, training, support, consulting, workflow optimization. We're here to help you guys be as efficient as possible with the software that we provide. We do that in our 15 offices across Canada and 12 training facilities. But obviously, with the current times, that kind of stuff, it's opened up some new challenges for us, and a lot of us are working remotely. So we've got this slide in here too, because we've been doing this for a long time. We've worked with setting up VPNs and implementing Civil 3D on network drives remotely and things like that. We're here to help. There's no need for you guys to reinvent the wheel. Again, we want to make you guys as efficient as possible, even in these times of COVID. We have a great sales team across Canada, backed by a very knowledgeable technical staff in Ontario, Nova Scotia, Quebec, British Columbia, and we stretch to meet all the needs in between, sort of thing. We do have some upcoming events along the lines of similar to this one here. We've got some webinars on the left and some remote training courses as well on the right. If you want to know more about those, I'm going to post in the chat panel that you can go look on the SolidCAD website. That also might be a good chance to mention, if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, there is a questions panel in your webinar little display set up there. So don't hesitate to type it all in, and we'll address those questions at the end as well. We also have a hourly support program. This is more for any of those kind of ad hoc or niche training or workflow optimization, project-specific consulting and things like that. But if your software isn't ever working for you, we have a Solid Assist program. This helps you with licensing, helps you with bugs in Autodesk software as well as CTC software or any of that stuff. We have a dedicated team for this support program as well. So moving on, who is CTC Software? Oh, they are one of our partner products, along with Autodesk, Bluebeam, Knowledge Smart, things like that. They are the creators of these content packs, both in Civil 3D as well as Revit. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about Civil 3D, and they have two packs in Civil 3D, the Project Suite, and we're going to be looking at the Manager Suite. So again, the templates, the layers, the styles, we're really going to dive into it and see this really, really efficient user interface that they've set up and see some tools that you simply can't do in Civil 3D. And with that, I'd love to pass it over to Brian, and he can kind of take it away from here.
Great, thank you, Colin. We're just going to get our screens switched here. Give us a moment. Colin, give me a confirmation you're seeing the same slide you had.
Yep, I see it there. We're good to go.
All right, we're good to go. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to showing you some new things today. So we're talking about the CIM Manager Suite. It's a product from CTC Software. And I wanted to give a little background about this by first kicking it off with talking about what are CAD management tasks. Now, many of you on the phone here do both production and what we're calling CAD management. And there are a lot of things that go into this. But whether you're full-time doing this work or part-time, or you have to do all kinds of things and you're also IT, the challenge is the same. And so some of the stuff, first and foremost, we're working with templates a lot of the times, building this stuff so our teams can work as efficiently as possible and our drawings can look the way they're supposed to. There's a whole sort of other support files, be it Linetype files, shape files, you name it. There's quite literally over 3 dozen different file types to really make Civil 3D just sing. And it's a complicated puzzle. You're dealing with, generally speaking, CAD standards, right? How we use the software, how the products that we get out of it, how they look, right? And you've got some other things on your plate, like configuration of AutoCAD and Civil 3D and deployment of it, perhaps, maybe some training, right? A lot of things go into CAD management. Our focus are these top 3, these ones in bold, because they're about working right within the software and managing all of that content that you work with. So what are some of the challenges around that kind of stuff? It takes too much time, right? Anyone who has built styles, tried to manage layer sets, create line types, you name it, you know that it's very time consuming. And oftentimes it's not rocket science. I'm just trying to create some layers or edit some styles, and it's too clumsy, right? There's also a lot of details to keep track of. It's very tough to sort through this stuff sometimes with those 3 dozen plus types of files. Interfaces are slow and glitchy. Some of the best ones, the layer dialog box, not so bad, but it leaves a lot to be desired. Take perhaps a description key set. That's pretty tough to work with. It's very glitchy. What about editing line types, right? What about understanding where certain layers or different styles are being used across your templates? The interface to manage that stuff is very slow. You can't purge things out of there because you don't know where things are being used across your template, be it layers, styles, you name it. And one of the other challenges is inexperience. Colin's role with SolidCAD, he works in this stuff every day, right? He's working with templates, right? But so many of you are involved with production or perhaps some of those other CAD management tasks like training and so forth. So it's not every day or even every week or month that you're jumping in here to like edit the layers or something like that. But oftentimes when you have to, instead of it being a 4-hour task, wouldn't it be great if it was a 1-hour task? Or if there was an overhaul of your layer standards, instead of it being days and days of work, wouldn't it be nice if we could trim it down to a few hours? Now, a lot of that is about deciding what your organization needs, but the other part of it is just doing the work. And that's what we're really trying to solve here. When we don't solve that stuff because of all these challenges, what do we end up with? We end up with mediocre templates, and that, of course, affects production, right? If you have a lot of users creating their own styles or own layers or you name it, almost every time, or maybe you've got some of what they need, but they have to create more of it on their own, that really slows down production. Now, what's involved in all these files? I'll call all that stuff CAD content, okay? Some of the most fundamental stuff, line types, plotting setups, blocks. We've got layers, certainly in any AutoCAD-based platform, including just vanilla AutoCAD. We've got AutoCAD text, dimension, and leader styles. And we've got a whole boatload of Civil 3D object and label styles, commonly well over 1,000 of those in a given template. And then you've got big table interfaces for like description keys in your figure prefix database for survey workflows. And then you've got all sorts of settings. Okay, now that's just breaking it down to 6 bullet points, but I think you get an idea, right? This is all, you guys are familiar with most of this stuff. And some of this, you're probably looking at it going, oh man, I hate it when I have to deal with those description keys or trying to clean up textiles or whatever it is, right? And so the tools I want to show you here address the vast majority of what you do across this whole platform of files. Your line types, layers, all those basic annotation styles. The CIM Manager Suite is this package of tools that makes all of this stuff not only easier and more intuitive, but a lot faster to get through what you're after. And this is real important. Again, I think we understand good standards and styles and templates feed into efficient production, right? Yet those of you on the line here, oftentimes your plates are really, really full, and so you don't have the time for this stuff. So your work on standards and templates is very important. You're one of the few people who know how to do it, but you also have a lot else, a lot of other things on your plate. So with that, I'm going to jump into Civil 3D, and we're going to start talking through, and I'm going to demo these tools in the CIM Manager Suite. So the Manager Suite, it's a ribbon that shows up in Civil 3D, pretty straightforward, okay? And they serve a number of different purposes, okay? Now, a lot of the tasks that you might use with this could be creating a brand new template. Maybe you're overhauling your standards. Maybe you picked up a new client base and they don't necessarily provide the templates for you. You have to create that. Or maybe a lot of your standards come from a major client, but you have to kind of have your own set as well. And maybe you're trying to do a save as of their set and then, you know, make a custom set for your firm. Whatever the case, you're working through all these interfaces, managing all these settings, layers, and styles, okay? So this first one deals with one of the most fundamental things, deals with line types, okay? And a lot of us have worked with line types, probably not too fondly, but what are line types? You have to work in a line type file, a basic.lin file. And there's this kind of like little coding language to understand how to build these line types. And if you don't do it every day, you forget how to do this, right? So cleaning up or managing line types or creating new ones, whether it's a new set of standards or you just need some line types for a particular project, can be really clumsy because you don't get to see what you're creating. It's just this kind of text-based interface. So what we can do instead is we can use Linetype Manager. And if you think about it, what's the biggest challenge with dealing with line types? One, it's that goofy syntax, but the other thing is I don't know what I'm building. I don't get any kind of, let me open up the line type file here. I don't get a preview of what I'm creating, right? So in this tool called Linetype Manager, when you open up a Lin file, it gives you a full list of everything within that. And any one of them you click on, it gives you a preview of what that looks like, okay? And it's specific to the actual, notice there's a standard and a Roman text style in here, okay? Those are based on the current drawing and those text style definitions, okay? Now it's just not a viewer, okay? We've got all these edit commands, we can create new ones, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this initial main dialog is to just view your Lin file through a different interface. Okay, I can filter things in this way. Perhaps you've got a lot of custom line types. You can filter what you're looking at. You can control the actual order. This is the order of the line types in the Lin file, or I can use a display option where I sort by different columns. Okay. And again, as I click on any of these, it gives me a preview of what that looks like. And depending on how my line types are built, I can change the scale of the preview down there. Let's take a look at one of these here, the gas line one. I can highlight that, and then I have an edit button up here. I'll click on this, and it gives me an interface to be able to edit this line type. There's the name, there's the description, okay? One of the beauties of Linetype Manager is it's really hard to break things. You don't need to understand line type coding. It's very simple. There's the name, the description, and then there's these components down here. I've got a line component, a space, and then a text, and then another space. And as I click on each of these, it gives me the parameters that define that particular component. So perhaps some of the spacing around the word gas is not quite working out. I want it to be a little bit tighter space. In fact, you can see the gap's kind of bigger on the left side than it is on the right, right? And our CAD standards are important. It's important how this stuff looks. So I can just grab the space before. Let's drop it down to 4 perhaps. I can look and say, well, a little bit too much. Change it to 4.3. And as you do it, the preview updates. I hit OK to it. I hit Save. And then it writes it back to the Lin file, and I'm all ready to go. Okay. If I wanted to write that new definition to the current drawing or template, I just click Add to Drawing, and then it'll write all the selected line types from this Lin file into the drawing. That's just basically a native functionality that we embedded right in here, so you didn't have to work through the clumsy, slow interfaces to do this. By the way, this tool I'm showing you guys, this is free. Every one of our suites come with free tools. In the CIM Manager Suite, the Linetype Manager itself is free. So those are free to indefinitely. Just go download the trial and those will work. Now the other ones are free for a trial period, and then after the fact they come with paid licensing. Let's go ahead and make a new line type. I can click the new button, give me a blank slate, or I could just make a copy of one. Let's do that. Let's copy this gas line one. And maybe it's a sanitary line. You don't have to put a description in. You certainly can if you want. And here was that previous definition, but now I want instead to, let's delete that space. Let's delete this text component. And maybe there's a shape I want to add in here. So I can click the shape button. It adds a shape component. And these, like text components, have a lot of properties associated with them. So first thing is, what's the shape file? Okay, it's finding all the shape files in my options support paths. And then within the selected shape file, if there are multiple shapes defined, I can choose from those as well. I need to choose the size of the shape. Now these are metric units I'm working in here, so that's entirely too small. So we can bump this up to 1. Maybe it needs to be a little bit bigger. Let's say 2. Okay. And then the rotation. I want this to be an arrow pointing in line with my center of my line. Then I've got some X and Y offsets. So I don't even really need to understand line type building or notation because it's so easy, right? I click on a component, I just edit the values over here, and I just kind of tinker with it until I get what I want. Maybe that space in this situation, I want it to be a little bit bigger. And by the way, what you're getting here is exactly what you'll get in the drawing. In fact, this preview is based on the standard AutoCAD plot command. So what you see here is what you will get in your drawing. And so coming after a shape or a text component, typically we need another shape to give it a space there. It defaults to 1, perhaps needs to be a little larger, 2.5, right? What would you normally be doing with this? You tried 2, save your Lin file, come back to AutoCAD, import it again, okay? Overwrite the old line type, refresh your polylines, make sure it looks the way you want. Oh shoot, I didn't want that. Go back to the Lin file, right? And here we can just change it and I get immediate feedback right away. So this is one of the main points of Linetype Manager. One of the other fields in here, the rotation type, there might even be properties to line types you guys aren't even familiar with, some of the functionality that's there. We have it all built into here, but in plain English, you can understand the options available to you. The rotation type relative to a line, that means regardless of the direction the line's drawn, it'll always be as I've defined it here. Plan readable, okay, that's if you have text in there, you want it to always flip. And then an odd one that it's not used that often, but it's functionality that's there, is relative to the WCS, meaning letters would always be upright. Okay, hit OK to this. I hit save. And notice if I jump back to my notepad editor here, I tell it to refresh this. Here's these new line types. That sanitary one I created. Okay. So we're not creating some kind of proprietary special, CTC software line type. It's native line types. We're just giving you a much better way to work with it. Now, this is one of my favorite tools in the suite, in fact, because it takes a core basic part of our AutoCAD standards and improves it. It's something that's been there for many years, and it just takes even some of the most basic stuff and makes it a lot easier to work with. So a couple other things here. We can import as well. So say I've got some line types in the drawing, right? And I don't have those line type definitions in my lin file. It's a common thing where you get line types in your drawing, and then as you deploy new versions of AutoCAD and Civil 3D, you lose track of your lin files, okay? If you have a line type definition in the drawing, we can click on import, and I can grab, say, any objects on the screen that might have those line types I'm after. Turns out it's a fiber optic line and a fuel line type. I'm going to add both of these. It gives me some control over the type of rotation in there. I'm going to keep it relative to the line. And then these will write back to the lin file itself. They show up down here. Okay. Now, how you sort this stuff, right? How it shows up in the lin file, you actually have control on that too. I can take this and I can move this up. I can sort this stuff around as I see fit. Okay, this is the actual build order or the list order in the lin file itself. Now, to me, it doesn't matter as much if you're always working through Linetype Manager, but nevertheless, you can manage kind of the list itself. So I come back here, refresh it, you'll see here's kind of that resorted order we have here. So that is Linetype Manager, a variety of the different things you can do with it. One of the things we have coming, a new feature, is to be able to convert things from one unit to the next. So maybe you're working with some line types that are defined in metric units, and you need to get them to imperial or units of feet, and you need to run that conversion, right? We're going to build that right into here. It's going to be a simple conversion button, or you can apply standard conversions or whatever kind of custom conversion. Maybe you wanted to double the scale of all your line types, something like that. You'll be able to do that. So that is Linetype Manager. One thing to note, in all of our tools, we always have help, videos, and support up here. And if you click on any of these, they're going to give you exactly what it sounds like. So there are links right to the help button, brings us right to the user guide, where it gives us detailed explanations of how to use these tools. You click on videos, it brings you to the CTC website, where you'll find YouTube videos specifically on that tool. And then support, it'll actually link you right to SolidCAD and CTC, where you can submit what your issue is. And then about, you can actually access latest installers at any point by clicking right in here. So you just run those new installers. If we release a new feature, like the Linetype Manager one I was talking about, you run that new installer, you'll get the new build, and you're off and running. Okay, let's move on. Another tool in here we've got called Template Tracker. Now, what is this about? Well, this is actually one of the most popular tools in the suite, because it addresses a real tedious pain point in Civil 3D and AutoCAD template building. What goes into our templates? We've got layers, right? Do you know where these layers are being used? Most of the time, unless you've kind of memorized it, or you have some spreadsheet where you documented it, you don't know where they're being used. And when you're trying to perhaps overhaul a template or build new features out, it's hard to know where the stuff is being used. Or maybe you're even trying to delete some of it, like I don't need C Road Center and C Road Center new, right? But I try to delete it and it just tells me, sorry, it's being used somewhere. And so what are you doing? You're like, well, it's probably in a style somewhere. So let's start looking through styles, right? And you can waste tons of time searching for this stuff. Template Tracker is going to tell you where that is. But it's not just layers, it's other things too. Think about your text styles. Maybe you've got a bunch of text styles in here, extra ones carried over, or maybe they were brought in accidentally by adding some blocks to your template. These are even worse. You don't know where they're being used, and they can be very difficult to figure out, let alone try to clean up your template and delete out of here. Same with dimension styles and multi-leader styles. These core fundamental styles and layers across your templates are embedded in Civil 3D styles and other things like blocks, and there's no way to know where they are. This is where Template Tracker comes in. This is one you might only use 2 or 3 minutes at a time and then be done with it, but it can turn what can be a really tedious task into just a short, quick little fix. So remember that layer we're looking at, C-Road Center? It's used in 3 different styles. It tells me that right here. 3 alignment styles. Now I can dive into any one of those alignment styles and control in a detailed way the layering for each of the view types. Or if I know I'm just trying to get rid of C-Road Center, I can just grab them all and swap the layer reference out for something else. In this case, we wanted it all to be C-Road Center New. Okay. And then for convenience, we put a delete layer button in here. So we can just delete C-Road Center out of here. And now I'm just down to C-Road Center. Okay. Now there is a force delete command. Some of you might be thinking of this. It's L-A-Y-D-E-L, the laydel command. And you would be able to delete C-Road Center with that. But the problem is that you didn't know where C-Road Center was referenced, right? That's where Template Tracker comes in, is you understand where the stuff is being used. This is a modeless window, by the way, meaning I can keep it open, and I can also work in Layer Manager. I can work with my styles over on Tool Space here, right? So when you're fixing or cleaning up those templates or building new ones, it really helps you. It might even just be project drawings you're trying to clean up a little bit to submit for approval. You can do that quite easily here as well. Up here, we've got layers, text styles, dimension styles, and multi-leader styles. So let's take a look at text styles. Here's all the text styles in the drawing. Remember we looked at that SHR one, we couldn't delete it. Turns out SHR is referenced in some block definitions, right? So blocks like what we've got on the screen here. I mean, for one, even if you knew where that they were in the block definitions, what would you have to do? You'd have to go into block editor for every one of these and change out the text style reference. Well, here we can just grab all these block references, say, you know, all of these should be on standard. And then I can delete SHR. And it shows you all kinds of references. Like if I click on the standard text style, the default dim text style, actually entities in the drawing itself. So it may not just be a template with only styles and layers in it. It could also be project drawings that you're trying to clean up or something like that. And then all these Civil 3D styles, quite literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of references to just that text style. And I can swap all of these out at once. Let's change everything here over to annotative. Now all these references, everything is being set to annotative. And you might have seen some of the things change in the background as well. Even if you knew where to go, how long would that take you, right? And these are, again, some of the hurdles where we just say, you know, I know that would be nice, John, if we fix that up, clean that up, but I don't have time for that stuff, right? And so you just kind of leave your templates in this mediocre state. You don't have to do that anymore. A couple other things, the dimension styles, okay? Here it turns out there's a few entity references. We can just swap these out and this one you should be able to see the dimension style change as right when I do this, right? Change the different dimension style, okay? So quick and easy cleanup or management of all those referenced kind of fundamental building blocks in your templates. Layers, and then all the annotation styles as well. Somebody might be thinking of some of the other styles management in here, right? In fact, there's these commands right here in for Civil 3D styles: find references and replace with, okay? But you only have that for Civil 3D styles, right? So what we did is we basically took these two commands, gave you a way more kind of intuitive interface for it, and built it out for all the other standards type elements you have in your templates. So that is Template Tracker. Let's move on. We've got a multi-component tool here called Layer Boss. It deals with all the layers in your drawings. Let's take a look at our Layer Manager. Working in here, I mentioned kind of in the introduction, it's not the worst interface in here, but it can be pretty tough to do what? Creating out new layers. Maybe you want to kind of replace a bunch of prefixes or suffixes across your layer, and you end up editing this stuff one at a time. And what is this interface basically? It's a big table of rows and columns. What interface is most universal, easy to work with when you're talking about this? It's Excel, right? So Layer Boss, and in fact, the use of it with Layer Manager is the first of 4 places I'm going to show you where we build out, where we have tools that allow you to take these clumsy table interfaces, instead work in Excel, do all your changes there, and then actually sync it back or write the changes back to your template, right? So it's not just export all this stuff and then I get some layer dump in Excel. No, you actually can do your work and your editing in Excel and then sync it back. And you're going to see in a moment here, the Excel export that we get is a really smart kind of dynamic export. So let me show you how this works. We're going to come up here to Layer Boss, that's this panel, and there's kind of 2 main pieces to this. One is to deal with all the layers in your Layer Manager, and the other one is to deal with object layer settings. So here's the second of the 4 major table interfaces in Civil 3D and AutoCAD. Okay. So let's take a look at the DWG layers. I can export all of these. Now I can grab layers from the current drawing. I can grab layers from an XREF. I can grab layers from additional drawings, browse out and kind of do this big layer dump. Maybe I'm merging some templates together, you name it. I can limit my export by filters, and I can even include line types from my lin files. So depending on what I have path to in my options, it'll actually grab those line types and write those in the form of a drop-down in Excel. I can add the color to the cells in Excel, and if I'm using STB files, I can export the plot styles. So I said it was a smart Excel export. This is what I mean. All this kind of intelligence will go with it. So what does that look like? Let's run an export. It's going to export Layer Properties Manager. We'll save that. It asks me if I want to open the file right away. I'll say yes to that. And then here is my export. So visually, right off the bat, we see we get all the colors, right? Okay. Because it's Excel, things like this, editing is really easy. These are the reasons we want to go to Excel, right? Because the editing is so quick and easy. Now we said we exported line types. Well, what does that mean, Brian? How do you get line types in an Excel file? Well, we don't actually take the DWG definition of it, but we build out drop-down lists in the line type cells in that column. So everything from your lin file as well as what was in your drawing will show up here. So I can actually grab these and assign these as I see fit. And then, you know, clipboard copying and pasting, all this stuff gets so easy because we're in Excel. Same with my line weights. It actually brings that out there. So it's not just a dumb export of text. I mean, it is Excel, it's just text, but it grabs all your standards themselves. So when you set this in here, it'll adjust that in the DWG and the template itself. If you're using STB files, it'll export your plot styles that exist in there, okay? And then the other basic columns, basically the binary columns, they're just a yes or no option, okay? And now your editing in here is really simple, okay? Making new layers. I'll just give you guys a couple examples here, right? Changing colors, you name it, you can just type it out here. I won't read the actual new shade, put that in there. That comes on an export, but you get the idea. What about deleting some layers? Let's do that same example where, remember the C road center line type or the layer we're dealing with? We know that has references. We remember doing that. Let's delete that out of here. I mean, it's Excel. It's gonna let us do it. Excel doesn't know what exists in the DWG right now, okay? So we'll delete that out of there. Then what if you made some other mistakes, like you were copying things, inserting some copies, and because it's Excel, it's gonna let you do what? Duplicate layers, okay? So there's all these things because it's Excel, it'll let you do it, but how do I then fit that back into a DWG? We have that built into the tool so it can kind of recognize the stuff and know how to work with it. You know, one of the other things I've seen people doing is perhaps you're building out a new layer list. You could use some extra tabs here to kind of be building together prefixes and suffixes to build out your whole layer names here. Think about descriptions. Maybe there's just words you're trying to replace the word roadway with transportation, or you know what I mean? Find replacing. You can't do that in a layer manager either. Okay, 56 edits at once, right? Really quick and easy in Excel, okay? So whatever the workflow is, you need to build a new template. Start with an export of the old one and then start overhauling it. You want to make some tweaks to it. It's really kind of clumsy in the layer manager. Export it here. In fact, what I see a lot of our current customers doing is they just maintain a master Excel spreadsheet. And in fact, this is where you actually kind of maintain those layers. And you sync it back to templates to update that stuff as you want. So let's save this. And then, you know what? While we're at it, just so you can see it a little better, let's delete a few more layers. Okay, we'll come back to Civil 3D. I'm going to cancel out of the export window and we're going to go to the Create Edit DWG Layers. So this is the option where we point to the Excel file itself, and now we can write those changes or import those layers, whatever it is, into our current drawing. I could also browse out and write changes to a different drawing or template. And then I've got a couple options down here. I can sync to drawing layers, or I can add to drawing layers. Now, it's important here. Add to drawing layers would just be to add everything that doesn't exist in the drawing. Sync is more what it sounds like. It's a one-way sync, meaning if I deleted something in the Excel file, it will delete that in the DWG or the DWT. And that's what we're going to be after here, right? Because we deleted some layers and we want to see that change happen in the drawing itself. But say you just wanted to create 20 new layers for your template. It'd be much easier if you, you know, a nice way to do this, you run open sample file, and it'll actually give you a blank slate with all of the drawing's current settings, line types and so forth, but it's just a blank slate where you could type out the new layers you want, and then you would come back to Civil 3D and you'd run add to drawing layers, and then you could dump in 20 new layers itself, okay? There's a lot of different workflows. Some of your heads are kind of turning with this ideas, right? A lot of times there's layer sets you don't necessarily want in your standard templates. You want to bring those in only on certain cases, okay? You can use this to very easily dump those layers into that template. Maybe it's some demo layers, or maybe it's just for your railway projects or something like that. We're going to run the sync option here. I'm going to click next. And it's going to tell me what's about to happen. And this is important because I want to understand what's going on, right? So it gives me a report of everything that's about to happen. So I've got new layers, see Anno site. I've got updated layers, and it highlights in green here. Line type changes, the color changes. Got some unchanged layers. A lot of those I didn't touch. I've got duplicate layers. Okay, so it's telling me, hey, Boza, you can't do that. Well, we can very easily come back here and say, oh, I made a mistake. Shouldn't have had to see roads. AutoCAD doesn't allow that. I can keep this open. I save Excel and come right back here, and there's a reload button. And when I click that, it's going to refresh, and guess what? There's no duplicate layers now, right? So you can kind of work with both of them open at once. Now we should expect to see deleted layers here, but guess what? We can't because there are references to them. So Layer Boss won't just wipe this stuff out. It's going to give you a chance to respond to it. So right here, I can choose to either ignore that and say, no, those are in use, let's not delete them. Or I can instead uncheck ignore. And then if I know what it's supposed to be, in this case, we knew C Road Center should go to C Road Center new. But then these other ones, let's say, I'm not sure where that's being used, right? Where's that layer being used? That's where Template Tracker comes in. So we actually embed Template Tracker right in here, this little ellipsis button. If I click on this, it'll launch Template Tracker right within here. And then I can dive right into that specific layer. Turns out, oh, it's used in that one style. Swap it out for a different one. Okay, I close out of this, and guess what? Now that layer shows up under the deleted category. And if I know that's the change I want for all of these, I can just easily come in here and say, yep, all of those go to C hydrant hydrology catchment. Okay, so all of those are going to be swapped out. That one's going to be deleted because we already swapped it out. Hit OK to this. Come over here, we see some of those C hydrant catchment layers deleted. The C Road Center is deleted. We just have C Road Center new now. Okay, it's a really powerful tool set and really flexible. How you guys use this, you know, it's up to you. But I'm just kind of giving you a taste of some of the most common workflows. So that process right there, right? That major table interface. Push to Excel, do whatever I want with it there, even combine it with other Excel files and then write it back to the template. We've recreated that for the 3 other places in Civil 3D. The next one is object layers, but there are similar workflows, so I'm not going to spend as much time on it, but I want to give you a taste of how these work. So your object layers, what are these? This is a list of all your Civil 3D objects and the layers they land on when you create those objects. This interface is really tough. There's no mass editing, okay? If you're ever trying to take these settings and export them or write them from one drawing to a next, there's no way to do it. All the native commands won't bring this stuff along, okay? So I can instead just export my object layers. And it'll write to Excel. And it's gonna come out formatted in a slightly different way. Here's kind of the hard-coded column. And now I can do things like type in a new layer name. It'll create a new layer for me if I want, even if C align doesn't exist in there. Maybe I want some suffixes, some of the wildcard options in here, okay. Okay, clipboard copying, right? This is all Excel. You guys get the point of this, right? What if you make a mistake? What if you type invalid characters? Well, again, it's Excel. It's going to let you do it. But our tools will catch it. So let's save this, come right back to Civil 3D, and we'll run create edit object layers. Go and grab that Excel file. Then I've got a checkbox here for create new layers. Okay, if I typed a new layer in Excel that doesn't exist here? Do I want to create new ones on the fly? Or do I just want to have that setting in object layers? That's another strategy too. You can do that. So I hit next. Again, gives me a nice hand to report. And it even flags where those errors are. Remember, we put that / in there. It's not going to let me proceed. I can't have / in there. So we do this with all of our tools, a lot of kind of error checking in this way. And then it gives you information. Click reload here. And then that, oops, didn't save the Excel file. So I have to save it and come back here, click reload. And now that error goes away, right? So we build this into our tools all over the place. Because if our tools are saying to leave the software and go to something like Excel, there's a lot of chances for error. We build a lot of checks in there. So here's the new layers that are going to be created and assigned. I've got all these changes to the modifiers in the value column. Can hit OK to this. And then we'll see those changes here, see align, all those modifier settings, and we also see the new layer here, okay? So the last module we have deals with some of the survey related stuff, okay? And there are two other major table interfaces here as well. One of the biggest ones is the description key set. All these survey codes and what to do with them, what styles to assign, what layers they should go on, all these settings. This is a really glitchy interface as well, right? You make a new code and it kind of jumps all over the place and it sorts by to some other area, right? It's a very clumsy interface to work in. So we've got export description keys. Go to Excel with it, right? So many of our standards are built into these table interfaces, and so that's why we're doing this in Excel instead. So I'll go ahead and open this. It's going to launch into Excel, and I get this entire interface. And again, a smart export. All my layers come with it. All my styles, my point label styles, my point styles, okay? And now I can edit things as I see fit, whether it's just deleting a few codes, okay? Maybe I'm building out an entirely new code set. Maybe you're changing coding standards, okay? Export it here. Perhaps it goes into that survey manager's hands and he or she type out the new codes. You name it, there's a lot of ways to work with this. A lot of times the field cheat sheets, you build those in Excel. Well, now you can just have it all kind of be based on one thing. Your Excel file will feed the field cheat sheet, will feed the description key set in Civil 3D, right? Because all this stuff can be synced around. What if we're making some new codes? We built some cool functionality in here where perhaps you're overhauling things a bit and you're making entirely new codes, or maybe you're adding some codes because you're taking on kind of new project types. So I've got a hydrant code in here, and I don't have a hydrant point style. I can actually just type out the point style I want to be created, and Excel's going to actually tell me this doesn't match the data validation. So we build in data validation to these Excel exports. It's just a native Excel feature. But it's telling me, hey, this doesn't exist. And so we can take that meaning, okay, that point style doesn't exist there. But when we sync this back, we're going to be able to have it automatically create point styles for us. And then that's why we put this block column in here. It takes every block name from the drawing, puts it in here, so if I'm creating new point styles, I can spell out what block it should get. Or I could change the blocks referenced in existing point styles, okay? I can set my layers, whatever they need to be. Okay, we'll save this. We'll come back to Civil 3D and I'll show you how this syncs up. Run the create, edit, description keys. I'm gonna browse out to that Excel file. I could create a brand new description key set. Again, if you're creating entirely new standards, this would be a huge time saver. In fact, we've got a number of webcasts out there already that are kind of more workflow oriented, like creating a new template in Civil 3D with the CIM Manager Suite. Where are the exact steps for that particular process that CIM Manager Suite fits into? We've got webcasts and lots of resources for you guys on that. So I'm not gonna create a new one. I'm gonna sync it to the CTC, the existing one. And again, we could be adding or syncing where both additive and subtractive changes will be reflected in the drawing. Finally, I can tell it to create new point and label styles if I defined new ones in Excel. I hit next. There's that new point style, or excuse me, the new code as well as the new point style. Got some changed codes, got some deleted codes, okay? And again, I can go back to Excel, make some changes, save it, reload, and it'll refresh this report. So I'll hit OK here. And then of course, we'll see all of those changes in our description key set. Here's that hydrant code, that new one we made. It built out a point style for me with that exact block inside of it. Rest of the settings in there are just taking our default ones, okay? And then one other piece, this is perhaps one of the toughest interfaces to work in, is the figure prefix database. This is for automatic line work, basically. Where do your survey figures go? How are they styled when they're created by the software? This isn't even a drawing-based interface, but it's really tough to work in. And so this thing export just as easily, where we can make all those changes and then sync them back. So I'll just show you the export here. You can see what it looks like, but the process, I think you guys are getting the hang of this, right? It's pretty simple. Push it to Excel, create a whole new set, edit it here whenever I want, and push it back, okay? Lots of different workflows. Perhaps you're switching a current project's standards from one to the other. You could use Layer Boss for changing your layers. You could use them as layer states. You could sync an Excel file to change the state of all your layers from plotting one way to plotting another. I know layer states are kind of a clumsy thing, kind of a hit and miss thing. A lot of people like them, others have trouble with them, but you can do the same kind of thing here. Just sync an Excel file for that different state of your layers. So that is the CIM Manager Suite. Like I said, it all comes in a ribbon here. It's a fairly new product we just released a little over a year ago. Real excited. We've been seeing a lot of use by it by people out there. This stuff comes in network licensing, so if there's 2 or 3 or 4 different people at your office that need to be using this, you can all share one license for it. So it's really handy, really flexible in that way. Just a summary of kind of what we're doing with the CIM Manager Suite. All the major table interfaces, 4 of them I mentioned, they all sync to and from Excel. That's a huge gain instead of working in those clumsy interfaces. Template tracker, right? All those layer and annotation style references, we can track that stuff. We can easily switch them out en masse. Line type editing, we can do this stuff visually. I see a lot of companies that they'll build custom line types per project. It could be, I've seen some people doing like right-of-way distances built into the line type. A lot of creative ways to do it. And now it's actually worth exploring because line type editing and creation isn't such a difficult thing. Almost any user can jump in there and do it. In fact, like I said, that's one of the free tools, so you can give anyone access to that one. We want to complete work much more quickly. I mentioned this stuff at the onset, right? You guys are busy. You guys are often some of the most CAD savvy people at your organizations. Your time for this kind of stuff is very limited. And so these tools are aimed at letting you get in there, get the work done, and getting that better set of templates and standards out to your production staff. Because, right, let's face it, better standards, better templates make for more productive staff. So that's everything I wanted to show for you guys. As Colin mentioned, we want to take any and all questions you guys have. We'll do that now. So go ahead and type that stuff into your into the GoToWebinar system. And I'm going to throw Colin's contact information up here as well.
Thanks, Brian.
If you guys have any questions on this. So, Colin?
Yeah, we've got we had one right off the start, just asking if this was recorded and where we can watch it, sort of thing. So I posted, I just posted the SolidCAD events page in our chat, but you can find it all on the SolidCAD YouTube page as well as the CTC software YouTube page. And these are usually posted kind of within the week. But with that, that is the only question. You knocked it out of the park, Brian. Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, as things come up, as things arise, you know, don't feel free to reach out to Colin, myself, any of us with questions, how you might be using these tools. I know oftentimes we get kind of locked into a kind of a standard process in how we use the tools. A lot of times we're not actively exploring new tools, right? And so that's why we do these webcasts. You guys are aware of the stuff that's out there. So
we just got one additional question. Can you edit spreadsheets with multi-users?
Yeah. So it is a spreadsheet. So the way I was using it, I was just writing it to my local drive, and so that way it's a single editable user file. But I think the feature you're asking about is more about the Microsoft technology. So if you save Excel files, we do this a lot at my company, right? You can share Excel files through Microsoft's cloud system, and in that way, much like Google Sheets or something like that, you can have multiple people editing that spreadsheet at once. And then you can use the tools I showed you to path to a local cache of that anywhere and then run that sync. But yeah, so long as you use those tools, yeah, Office 365, you can do that. So if I understand your question right, that would be the way to do it. Because when we do that sync, or that, even when I was reloading, all it is doing is reading one time the current state of that Excel file that you path to. It's not necessarily a dynamic link, right? It's just a one-time read and a refresh of what it's going to do to the drawing. So how you use that Excel file outside of it, Office 365, you name it, totally up to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and like Brian had said before, although there's a lot of information getting pulled to those Excel files, there's nothing proprietary in them. So yeah, they're going to work just the same as any other Excel file would in Office 365.
Yeah.
All right, that seems to be all the questions so far. Again, if you do have any more, reach out to myself, Colin Gaudette at solidcad.ca. Reach out to support@solidcad.ca. We're all trained on this stuff and ready and willing to help. So with that, I will say thank you for your time as we're approaching 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. And have a great rest of your week. Have a great rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you in the upcoming webinars. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.